Hey kids, howdy and welcome. It is time once again for Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. It is February 5th. So we are here to talk about Monday the 5th through Sunday the 11th of February. It's a quiet week. There's not a whole lot to talk about this week. There's a new moon coming up. There's some changes with Mercury that we talked about last week that we're going to re-talk about this week just because of Pluto. And then I'll do my little Venus overview at the end. But let's start with a question. This is a cool question that might have a disappointing answer. We'll see. It's from Kate. My partner is one of a set of identical twins and asked me a question I couldn't answer. Is there ever a marked difference in birth charts for identical twins? He and his twins are noticeably different in temperament, personality, and life experience, so that we sometimes jokingly refer to the brother as the dark passenger or evil twin. Ha. But I know when I have changed the time of birth for myself by a couple of minutes. My mother told me my birth was 7:30 a.m., and when I found my birth certificate listed at 7:25 a.m. at the time of birth, it didn't really make much of a difference in my chart. Of course, I'm an amateur and fairly new to astrology, relying on somewhat simplified birth chart calculations to pull everything up. I know life experiences can also significantly alter personality and temperament, but I thought it might be a good question to ask. Thank you for all that you do. I listen to the podcast and daily forecasts religiously, and I very much appreciate having a context for what I am going through emotionally. Kate. Love this question, and I think this will be an extraordinarily unsatisfying answer because, of course, most twins are born very close to each other in time. There's very little difference between one chart and another in the case of twins because same date, same location on the planet, all of which alters the chart. And, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't know the average length of time between twins' births, but it would take a full 2 hours of time for the rising sign to be different and all of the house placements to shift. So yeah, like Kate said, when she looked at a difference between 7:25 and 7:30 a.m., no, that will not make any difference in the chart's makeup. So then, does this not then disprove astrology completely? If two human beings would have almost identical charts, but be felt as completely different humans in their style of moving about their bodies, moving about their lives. So how do I want to then answer this? Well, I'll give one little abstract answer. One is that, if you distill everything down in the movement of the cosmos to its smallest bits, there's a pulse. There's a pulse that happens at the sort of subatomic level. And if you think about moments that string together to create our reality, each of those moments is like akin to one of those pulses, right? They're much smaller than we can even perceive, but they do say that this moment here on my left is different than that moment there on my right. So in an abstract, much bigger perspective than our minuscule human perception, everything's changed 17,000 times between the first twin's birth and the second twin's birth, even if they're only apart by 25 minutes or something like that. Because everything is moving dynamically. That pulse means many, many moments have passed. And in fact, the relationship planetarily is different after just a couple of moments that have passed. But that is way beyond our ability as human beings to perceive. which is one of the challenges of being a human being in a body is that our perception is so limited. We're only seeing a tiny sliver of even the light that we're bathing in. And this is kind of like that. We cannot perceive the difference in a half an hour that the chart would measure.
That's what I'm thinking. Planets are so big and we're so tiny.
Right, but like a hummingbird, right? If I look at a hummingbird, I just see a buzzing. I can't even see the wings, right?
Right.
But you can bet your ass if you were a hummingbird, Zoe, you'd be like, oh my God, this incessant flapping is getting me tired. I need some food. Right? It's all perspective. So if you were as big as the planet, you would see the differences much more starkly than we can at this tiny little level of, the specks of our little bodies. So there's no satisfaction to this in terms of like proving or disproving astrology or understanding how it could possibly work that two people with almost identical charts will be different in temperament. So again, I don't know if this is a satisfying answer, but I want to just express this, that my experience of astrology, much of it, is in reading other people, right? Sitting down and doing readings. So I, of course, have used astrology personally as a context tool since I started learning it, and I do every day. I use astrology on some level for my person. But if I'm sitting in a reading, part of the equation is the human being that I'm sitting with, right? They're there, I'm using their chart to prompt conversations, to ask questions, and then the session plays out as a function of the human being that I'm sitting with. So if I was sitting with one brother, I would have an experience of their chart sparking a conversation that is an astrological reading where that brother would be 50% of the equation, therefore generating the conversation I'd have with that brother. Where if 2 days later I sat with the other twin, same chart, different person, I would ask questions and promptings that might even be similar because I'm looking at the same chart, but the person I'm sitting with is a completely different human being. So I would posit that if we looked at this more empirically, we would find ways that both brothers' temperament would be well described by the contents of the chart, even if the style with which they did it at the level of the body and behavior might be completely different. I think I'm going to do another question because I've got a short one here that I think I can answer fairly quickly that Lindsay sent in. It's also an interesting question to me because it involves how to use astrology and the principles of transits if you're looking at a child's chart. So Lindsay writes, I don't know if this is the right platform for questions or not. It was, but I really hope you see this. I did. Listening to this week's podcast, it got me wondering, how affected are children by astrology? With big shifts like Pluto, what are the things we should look out for? My daughter is Aquarius rising at 4 degrees. I just would love to be prepared to support her through this transit and future big ones that come her way. Love the show and all your posts. You are truly the greatest astrologer out there.
Okay.
Thank you, Lindsay, and I appreciate all your hard work. I don't know if I'm the greatest, but this little Leo son loves any compliment. So thank you, Lindsay. I just also love this question because I can absolutely imagine this being an interesting question that would land on somebody who's burgeoning their knowledge of astrology, but also might have a child whose chart they are aware of.
I've never thought of this,
Well, yeah, right. But it's a thing to think about. So, of course, astrology affects children just as much as adults. We are all in the same soup, right? So the planets don't cause things, they reflect things. So a person with Pluto crossing their ascendant, it's not Pluto that's making their persona transform or how they relate to the world be reinvented or experiencing some kind of a death to self and rebirth, the way Pluto crossing, say, Pluto crossed my ascendant when I was like 38, 39 years old. It was a radical transformation of self, of identity, of authenticity, being in the world more authentic by going through difficult changes and transformations. So that makes sense to think of, a 39-year-old man's process, because we understand adults go through great change and transformation. Whereas the same thing will be happening to your daughter, Lindsay. She will be going through, not this year. 4 degrees is more a function of something that'll peak in 2025. So you didn't tell us how old Lindsay is, but how I want you to sort of receive the answer to this question is, just as I've described to the best of my ability in a short little question answer segment, what anyone might expect with Pluto crossing their ascendant, your daughter will experience in 2025 and 2026, concomitant with whatever's appropriate for her age. A 4.5-year-old getting to school age and going to school for the first time outside of the house at 5 and 6, that's Pluto that could, what I mean? Like, if that's a radical transformation of that person's identity, I can see Pluto crossing a 5-year-old's ascendant, marking a very dramatic difference between what they experience of themselves at home from birth to 4 and what they experience of self when they get out into the world in school at 5 and 6 years old.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Right? You just
Yeah, I was
alter
thinking
it
like,
to
oh, would they enter middle school or enter high school? Like those are all huge, youth moments.
Right. Exactly right. So what you want to be prepared for, Lindsay, and while this is a couple of years away, there might be some hints around it because Pluto is in her 12th house if she's a 4-degree Aquarius rising. And when you get to 2025 or so, when you clock that Pluto is like really on top of her ascendant, you assist her in the idea of self-reinvention and difficult experiences that help form her. But you can bet that it'll be appropriate to her age and development, kind of like you said, Zoe, that maybe, it's a school change.
Mhm.
What if in the next year or two you guys move? Then might be that, right? It could be like a teenager going to a new town and having to completely reinvent how they move about the world, right? So transit interpretations are the same, but they are modified to reflect age-appropriate potential change and transformation. So in this lunar cycle and into the next lunar cycle, Pluto has already done the big change. The Lord of the Underworld is hanging out right inside the gates of the Aquarius mansion. Mercury, Mars, and Venus are the personal planets. When they move, we are moved at the personal level. So what's happening in this 24 hours is our mind, our perception, and our communication is being dipped into the waters of Aquarius. So we're more intuitive, we're more innovative, we're thinking out of the box, we're speculating and taking risks, but we're also acclimating our mind and our perceptions to the power of Pluto in Aquarius by this conjunction. And then next week, Mars, the planet of action, will move into this intuitive, innovative sign and conjunct Pluto, helping our bodies get used to the new landscape. Venus will follow as well. So I just wanted to point out, more than just 2.5 weeks of Mercury in an intuitive sign guiding us from a kind of fast-paced and innovative way, we're also more acclimating to the depth of change transformation that Pluto is going to be bringing us in Aquarius over the next 20 years. If nothing else, just know that today could be pretty intense with Mercury and Pluto conjunct because that means our mind, our perception, our conversations are aligned with the deepest part of our psyche, our shadow, our unconscious, the place where power and authority dwells. And if we've got any power and authority issues where we're not understanding that we're the power and authority in our lives, yesterday, today, and tomorrow is a good opportunity to look in the mirror and say, I'm the one in charge of my own destiny.
I love that.
Lunar cycle changes on Friday. We move into our next cycle with a new moon in Aquarius. It's Friday the 9th at around 3 p.m. Pacific time. I love the elegance of the way the signs move. Like I spoke about this as December was becoming January. I just love that it's Capricorn that gets us across the hump of the new year so that we start the year with this sense of, what goals and ambitions do I have? What do I want? What mountain do I want to climb in the new year? And before we get to Capricorn, we move through Scorpio so that we understand that we got to die to self in order to be reborn and climb that mountain. And then once we've sort of crossed the threshold into the new year and Capricorn has gotten us sort of started with focused, grounded sense of what we want to accomplish, we move into the Aquarius mansion where we're ready to take a risk, try something new, respond to innovative ideas as opposed to just recapitulating the same old shit. So we're still in a place in our Saros cycle, the way that lunations work, like mathematically, that the new moons are coming late in the mansion. In other words, the sun moved into Aquarius like 3 weeks before this new moon, right? So we've already been through a couple of weeks of our conscious awareness being aligned in Uranus's territory of risk and innovation and being of service to the community, because that's another invention of the Aquarius mansion. But that's the lunation on Friday. So we're setting intentions for trying new things, thinking out of the box, being willing to take risk. There's a lovely way geometrically that this new moon taps into the nodes of the moon. So the nodes of the moon represent the past that we're moving away from and the future that we are attempting to create. They are an opposition. The south and the north node are always 180 degrees from each other because they operate as one sort of trajectory of energy. When you divide an opposition that's got an inherent stress associated with it, you divide it into two easy parts. It's called an easy opposition. So the new moon is trining the south node. That means that as we set intentions to move forward in a new way, we're easily able to let go of the past, to make new choices that are free of old patterns, because the old patterns are held in the south node, and a trine is harmonious geometry, so that we are not as heavily encumbered by the past in this new moon that would keep us from setting dynamic, powerful, exciting intentions, willing to speculate and take risks and break out of the box. And then the sextile, the
I
60
love that.
degree angle, is from the new moon to the north node. And a sextile is the geometry of potential, which means you can set fabulous new intentions, but you're going to have to work at it, right? That's the implication of the sextile. So it's a great new moon to say, outside of intention setting, just sort of like new cycle consciousness, that we're at an alpha omega. It's like, all right, I'm done with what's in the past. I easily let that go. And I'm ready to work at the intentions and desires I have that are new and different, kind of exciting, might be a little risky, but I'm ready to put the effort in and make a new future.
Amen.
Now, a new moon squaring Uranus is a wild card. It certainly makes the energy of the end of the week unstable and unpredictable. Sun square Uranus is a moment where anything can happen and probably will. Our conscious awareness can be knocked off balance by sudden new things that arise up out of nowhere when the sun is squaring Uranus. Moon square Uranus is a similar kind of instability, but it brings our unconscious into the mix of things that can knock us on our ass. Put them together in a new moon. Now we have the sort of thrust of the new energy that sun moon coming together give us every month in combination with a square to Uranus. So the energy at the end of the week could be filled with lots of unexpected things that come out of nowhere. And what I really, though, want you to take in about that isn't like, uh-oh, I might get knocked on my ass. I'd rather have you receive this information from the perspective of being radical about the new risky possibilities you might be ready to undertake.
So commit.
Yeah, commit and be willing to take risk at a high level. One of the watchwords of Uranus is freedom. We cannot develop deep and powerful freedom in our lives unless we're willing to take risks. Do things as they've always been, and things will stay the same. Try radical new possibilities and take some risks and watch your life change. This new moon has that excitement built right into it. And the last thing I want to say about Friday's new moon is, though I would call this a very edgy, unstable lunation, sort of buried in the middle of it is an almost perfect sextile between Saturn and Jupiter. This is good news for us, especially because the new moon is so unstable, potentially unstable. Saturn and Jupiter are the social planets. What that means is they reflect what we're doing in the world in actual like behaviors, right? The outer planets and their movements are reflecting our kind of higher self. Personal planets is us in bodies, and Saturn and Jupiter is us in communities building lives with structure and form and responsibility. That's Saturn, allowing for expansion and delight and all the yummy things we get to do when we have a solid foundation. That's Jupiter. When those two planets are in good working order with each other, then we are too. We have equal access between the responsibility and the gifts, what you have to do, what you get to do. So, in a potentially unstable new moon where we're setting intentions to create radical new possibilities that require risk, innovation, and a real willingness to step out on an edgy limb, Jupiter and Saturn in a sextile give a stability to the outside world that we're using the intentions we set to sort of make some things happen. It's like, so it's in the mix to be a little unstable, but it's also in the mix to have a really powerful connection to a balance between responsibility and expansion.
Okay, so how's Venus?
That's right. You know that we are finishing up with our Venus overview. She's active. If you remember last week, there was like nothing to say because she was sort of quiet out there wherever she was moving. And she comes into some big traffic tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. So there's a transit a day. Tomorrow, Venus will square Chiron. Wednesday, she will square the nodes of the moon because Chiron and the nodes are very close. And on Thursday, she will trine Uranus. So even though these play out one day at a time, the idea of Tuesday being different from Wednesday being different from Thursday is something that the planets don't really know about, right? We divide life
Right.
up into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday and Sunday, but the planets don't, right? So all in one fell swoop, there's the activation of a wounded space, Venus square Chiron. So we will potentially, well, I wouldn't even say potentially, we will be triggered emotionally in wounded places tomorrow to different or lesser extents, depending on your journey and where you're at and how the geometry of where they are is hitting your natal chart. And then the very next day, Venus moves far enough to expand that square to the nodes of the moon. So this is a transit that says, through stressful connections with others, I understand something important about where I'm moving next. Right?
Hmm.
The I am moving next is the north node of the moon. And the square, the T square with the south and the north, means there's some kind of a obstacle being worked through, which we know is going to connect to our wounds because Venus is squared Chiron the day before. And then we move into Thursday with a trine from Uranus, and this is an energy that adds to this recipe. Anything can happen. Unexpected things can rise up, because the planet of love and the emotional body is in harmony with the planet that brings change that's sudden and fast. So the wounds don't come up randomly. The gatherings and connections with others that might facilitate the healing that's at hand this week also doesn't happen randomly. But the entire week has a flavor in the Venus landscape of expect some change to come from examining where you're at with your wounds and how that impacts your forward movement through life. So, have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. Today we have a call-in dreamer from New Jersey. Hey Maria, what you dreaming?
Hey everyone, nice to be here. Nice to be part of this as well.
Yay, thanks for sharing with us.
So it all started with a weird sensation on my face. And then I remember it was a random bathroom, specifically just looking at the sink and the mirror. At least I had never seen this before in my real life. And it was not my current apartment. And yes, although I move a lot, I do still remember every bathroom that I have.
Yeah.
So I looked in the mirror and there was a piece of something just crawling out of my nose, right nostril to be exact. It had a glowing in the dark, bluish color light, and then it was a worm. So I immediately grabbed the paper towel and I tried to pull it out. It was just keep getting longer and fatter and nastier. So I just kept pulling, and all of a sudden, it's in my mouth. So my mouth's full of them, not just one, but like a whole bunch. It was super sick, nasty feeling in my mouth. So I was very clear that it was, a parasite, but I didn't know how to kill them, or should flush them, or what do I do with that? The color still remained the same as I pulled them out as they were coming out of my mouth and nose. Very transparently like blue neon color, highlighter color. And so the last thing that I remember was basically just thinking in my head in the dream while I was still dreaming.
Yeah, right.
Do I need to keep it alive? Do I need to send it off to the lab? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? And I was looking down and just really feeling really weird and icky. And then I feel them crawling over my stomach, my chest area. But then that was it. I woke up. And really, I don't really know where this came about, or why. It's the first time that I dreamed something inside of my whatever.
Meaning it was a style of dream that was new,
Yes,
the sort of the
yes.
physicalization of it, it starts with the sensation of an itch. I'm gonna ask you just a random question about, like, you as a human being. How would you describe for me and for all the people, the thousands of people who are listening, how you are working through your life to sort of reclaim your own sense of your voice
Oh,
and
yes.
what's true for you versus the messages that were installed into you as a function of your family of origin?
Wow, that definitely is a huge accomplishment of the past. I want to say 2 years going through therapy.
Oh,
Is just finding out really what
yeah.
I need to be telling my actual parents and how to set those boundaries.
Ooh.
And not only that, but it bleeds into your work. It bleeds into
Oh,
your group
yeah.
of friends, which
Yep.
went down to maybe three.
Right,
So
okay, that's
yeah,
actually a
yeah.
really good sign, Maria. Right? If you are reinventing yourself, like by going within and finding your true authenticity, which I think this
Mhm.
dream is talking about, which we'll get to in a moment, the fact that you have allowed your friend group to diminish down to three tells me that you're doing a bang up job. Right? Because it's true that our external life is a direct reflection of our internal life. And that starts with all the dysfunction showing up as our friend group and the jobs and the things we're attracted to. And that as we seek to transform and turn within, then the outside world has to shift and change. Yay.
Wow.
So this dream is all about that. And I'll show you exactly why. So let's just do what I do by inching through each sort of the story that the symbols are telling. So you're in a bathroom, right, as the setting. So we know that you're in consideration of your true, authentic self because that's what the bathroom in dreams represents. Every room in a home is a different kind of consciousness, and the bathroom is the consciousness of privacy and absolute connection to self, including our poopy smell and our nakedness and our
Mhm.
cleansing of yucky stuff, the sloughing off of old dead skin. It's all of that is symbolic of this is the room where I look in the mirror and feel
Mhm.
my full authentic self, warts and all. Right? You with me on that? Like there's no
Yes.
denying that. Okay.
I
So
love
then
this.
we know the dream is about that for you. And it's not even about like a connection to who you've been in the past, which might have been a past bathroom. The fact that it's not your daytime home, your waking life home, and doesn't resemble any from your past means we're in the abstract of you and your authentic identity, not something connected to a moment in your life, right? So the weird sensation on my face is interesting to me because one of the first ways we communicate to others what we're thinking and feeling inside of us is with our face, our expression, right? So if we're going to have a conversation of like, do you have your authentic voice sort of owned by self? Your facial expressions are the first point of expression in the world, right? So
Yes.
that it starts with the sensation in your face tells me we're looking at how you interact with the world communicatively fully. The fact that you're looking in the mirror juices me up as a dream because that's such a gorgeous shadow work symbol that we look in the mirror to sort of see what's reflected on the inside of us. And I teach this in all of my classes, all of my process classes, right? So even that showing up in the dream that you're looking in the mirror is that you're exploring and examining self. So the reason why I went to the communication and the family of origin is that, first of all, if you're in the bathroom, that you're in some consideration of self that often does connect to, well, who am I and who do I want to be based on transforming who I became from my family of origin. But it's the blue color that talks to me about communication because blue is the color of the throat chakra and the color symbolically that we associate with communication. And the fact that it's coming out of your nose, the limbic system and the smell capacity of our senses is the most primitive, right? So if the nose is involved, then we're in ancient history. I would even say
Oh,
because the nose is involved, we're in primal ways that you were given a sense of communication, and you're in the process of trying to transform this. And how I know this, the thing that you said in the dream that knocked my socks off was because they kept getting longer, nastier, and yuckier,
Yes.
and then they were filling your mouth. Well, now I know I'm in the right track, that this is a dream about your communication and how we know that it's about old communication styles that are not organic. You told us that. You were very clear that this is a parasite.
Yeah, which was
You said that.
yeah. Which
See, I could go anywhere with the blue worms,
happy. But it makes me even more happy knowing now. I mean, I had the connotations like, ew, a parasite, ew,
Right,
And now that
right.
you're doing all this, like, oh, shadow work,
Right.
it's like, yay!
There's what I call an ipso facto. Therefore, the fact is, if this is a fact, then that's a fact. So if they are parasites, then the fact is you're working on exorcising, getting rid of old, bright, shiny, neon highlighting, like big pieces of communication that are not yours.
Wow.
And then I like this consideration. Okay, do I need to keep these alive? Do I need to send these to a lab? I like that, Maria, because it tells us, to me, what it tells me, and you're telling us that you're sort of 2 years into this deep exploration, that then this is a moment of like, well, I don't know, am I done with this process? Have I learned enough? Do I need to keep these alive and explore more? Is there more to learn, i.e. send to a lab? So I like the way you end the dream, because you end it with a question, and it doesn't land on me as therefore some tragedy that the dream is expressing. It's just giving you a snapshot of where you're at in the journey of becoming more authentic by getting rid of old ideas and paradigms of perception that were not yours, but are parasites living in you that have been around in your family dynamic for many generations.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. Lennox.
I loved this dream. Thank you for sharing it with us. Yay. Yay.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.